gosh, Jesus must have been just such a hate monger and a warlord, because he encouraged his disciples to go buy swords. Man, that Jesus, what a radical.
They were purely decorative. Because he never said use the swords, just buy them. So he was a collector.
Right.
He was a collector.
This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and welcome to episode number 313. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week this week. For those of you returning, thank you. Welcome back. For those of you who are new, welcome aboard. I hope you enjoy what you hear today. And you'll come back and visit us in the future. Before we get started today, just want to mention, is a Reformation Gun Club exclusive. So if you want to hear the entire episode today, you need to check out the Reformation Gun Club. And today I want to thank the members who make all of this possible, including people like Morris from Dallas, Texas, Stephen B., Melvin from Holt, Missouri, Richard from Pagosa Springs, Colorado, Dan from Livonia, Michigan, Jackie from Federal Way, Washington, Edwin from Round Lake Beach, Illinois, Richard from Wichita, Kansas, Robert from DeKalb, Illinois, and right here in my backyard, Paul from McKinney, Texas. Thank you all so much for your support. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener funded, folks. It is, we don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. This little plug for the Reformation Gun Club and this shout out to our members is as much of an advertisement as you're going to hear on the show today or at any point. If you would like to support the show and find out more about it, find out about all the benefits like the monthly online hangouts, early access to the release of the show, lots of cool swag, hundreds of hours of exclusive content, and exclusive content like the show today. Check it out at armedlutheran.us/gun club. Look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. Come and join us. We would love to have you. I know I said last week that this week would be our online hangout, and life kind of got in the way, so we weren't able to do that. Work was kind of crazy and hectic, and so had to back up and punt, change plans. So today, I think next week is the last weekend of the month, so we'll get the May hangout next week for episode 314. Today we're talking about, oddly enough, hockey. What in the world are we talking about hockey for? Well, I've been watching, I don't know whether if you're a hockey fan or if you're a diehard or if you're just this time of year with the Stanley Cup Playoffs is right up your alley, all the excitement. That's been going on. The Stanley Cup Playoffs are at the time of this recording are entering round 2. And unfortunately, my Dallas Stars have been eliminated in 7 games by the Calgary Flames. But I'm a big hockey fan, so I watch lots of hockey. And if you are new to hockey, this may come as a surprise. But if you are a regular hockey viewer, you know that it can be a very violent sport. You got lots of guys moving at high speed and colliding at high speed and the occasional fights. And these things happen. These fisticuffs tend to happen most often if you breach some form of hockey etiquette, like running into the goaltender or some sort of dirty or borderline hit or targeting an opposing player. But occasionally it's kind of dumb. And when and that's what brought up or gave me the idea for this week's show. Sometimes the fisticuffs in hockey start after a player throws a perfectly legal hit. And the natural reaction, human reaction, is to retaliate, is to do something about it. Get even. You hit my guy, well, I'm going to punch you in the face. And now the rationale for all of this, for the fighting and the hitting, is really simple if you're not familiar with hockey. It's to get the top players from the other team to retaliate and then get thrown in the penalty box for 5 minutes, to distract their top players, perhaps. I'm looking at you, Matthew Tkachuk, who lost his mind and got completely out of his game over fisticuffs with one of the Stars players. But mostly it's to send a message. It's to discourage bad behavior in the future, right? You did something that you shouldn't have done. Now we're going to make you pay for it, and if you're not careful, it's coming for you again. Unfortunately, the way the NHL handles it is sort of similar to the way the UN handles conflict around the world, and that is to, instead of putting the primary offender in the penalty box, you throw both of them in the penalty box, and both teams end up being penalized because only one person was stupid. But if you watched or listened to my, for those of you who are members of the Reformation Gun Club and are still, and listened last year, during one of my Good Time Happy Hour shows, I was talking about the parallels between hockey and self-defense. And this is sort of where this is going. Watching the playoffs the past couple of weeks brought another idea to mind. Something else came to mind watching all of this. And I'll link to that previous episode in the show notes for those of you who are members of the Reformation Gun Club and have not seen it. You can go back and watch it. But the lesson in that particular episode was, when craziness happens around you, you need to keep your head about you and don't lose your mind in the midst of all the chaos, because sometimes that happens. And the case that I was mentioning, that I talked about and described in that episode, was a play from a couple of years ago in the playoffs between the Jets and the, or maybe it was last year's playoffs, the Jets and the Montreal Canadiens, and one of the Jets players just absolutely lost his mind over a bad play and obliterated a kid from Montreal. And in the midst of all of the fisticuffs and fighting that took place afterwards, as you know, everybody from Montreal was trying to rip the Jets player's head off, there's an amazing picture of Nicholas Ehlers from the Jets, who is standing over the injured Canadiens player, trying to keep all of that melee from falling on top of him. He's protecting a member of the other team who is injured on the ice, trying to make sure that he isn't injured further. And I thought that was an interesting, that there's an interesting lesson there about, one, protecting even people that you don't normally like, but also, more importantly, keeping your head about you when everybody else is losing theirs. Well, this time, this year's inspiration is similar. The fisticuffs in the case of Nicholas Ehlers, that story, were the result of a dirty hit. This time, the lesson is similar, but not exactly. If you've watched any hockey this season, you know that The refs seem to work with one eye covered, or sometimes seem to be wearing a full blindfold. This is especially true towards the end of the season, and in the playoffs when the refs they're swallowing their whistles is what they call it. Basically, they're hesitant to call minor penalties because they don't want to affect the outcome of the game, and they sort of just let them play. Unfortunately, that can sometimes turn into really ugly fighting and really bad outcomes. Add that to the universal notion that the refs are out to stick it to your team, which seems to be the common misconception on the part of hockey fans everywhere, embodied most notably by the "Ref, you suck" chant, which is the national anthem of the National Hockey League. And it all gets down to this idea that any perceived slight requires a retaliation, and it doesn't. So sometimes you'll see a perfectly legitimate legal hit thrown, and that will result in fisticuffs, as though for some reason it was perceived it should have been a penalty when it wasn't. So this is all very interesting, Lloyd. I'm sure that's what you're saying right now. This is all great, but what in the Sam Hill does this have to do with guns and self-defense? Well, I'll tell you. If you stick around, if you are a member of the Reformation Gun Club, if you sign up for the Reformation Gun Club, you'll be able to hear the rest of this story. If not, I will talk to you again next week in episode number 314.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.